All right, we are back. We're not done yet. Still watching This Morning on LoveworldPlus. My name's Henry Williams, and Zoe makes way for this discussion. She'll be coming back shortly. But on today's edition of discussion segment, we're looking at something very salient and really bordering on labor and talking about labor rights. Well, recently, just to give you the backdrop to this discussion, the House of Representatives has passed the second reading, on seeking to criminalize casualization of workers in Nigeria. That has been a contentious issue. Well, I have a lady here joins me and comes with a wealth of knowledge on labor issues. She is Amaka, Ezeh, HR consultant and associate member, Chartered Institute of Personnel Management. Amaka, thank you for joining us on This Morning.
Thank you, Henry. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
All right, we're talking about labor this morning and labor issues. And we talk of abuse, labor in Nigeria, a lot of workers in the labor market are really not getting their dues, if I may put it that way. We tend to, quoting someone in the past who said owing workers is not a big deal. I mean, even Nigeria owes, so why can't workers be owed salaries? But aside from that, what is your experience when we talk about labor and how the labor market and employment should be?
Thank you very much, Henry. So my view, and over the years, from my experience, so the labor market is such that provides an avenue for human capital development while allowing people to fulfill their potential, delivering on their jobs. Right now, because of the situation of Nigeria, there is there's shortage of talent. You see, a lot of employers tend to exploit, job seekers. Now, what is it's meant to be is why an employee is employed. I mean, is taken by an employer. He should be given a contract of employment, and in that contract of employment should be explicitly stated the terms of relationship between these employers. Now, what happens, going to the issue you just mentioned, casualization of workers, and I like the fact that reps have taken an action to raise such issue and to criminalize it, right? Now, what happens is that this, out of the case to get a job, right? Employees don't tend to read or demand for employment, letter of contract, right? So what happens when employers say to an employee, we are bringing you in for a period of 1 year or period of 2 years, which is subject to renewal, and you have so pay, and based on your performance, we might decide to retain you or we must tend to relieve you. What happens to us as employees, looking into it and asking, can we at least get some benefits that accrues to us? Benefits like HMO, pensions, insurance. Because of the nature of the job market in Nigeria, we tend to rush into this job without actually demanding, because it is stated clearly in Section 7 that employment relationship between an employer and an employer should be stated clearly for ease of reference and for clarity of these terms and conditions. So I think we should do more, by, making sure that our rights are being stated clearly on the employment letters and that we don't get exploited.
Okay, maybe I probably will love the fact that we look at some fundamentals now. I love the fact that you ended with our rights. Can you let us know some of the rights that a worker or an employee is entitled to?
Okay, thank you. So some of the rights we are entitled to, like I've spoken about the employment contract letter, then the other rights are rights to leave, maternity leave, paternity leave. Now currently, before now,
maternity and paternity.
Paternity. So before now, the Labour Act has no provision for paternity leave.
Okay.
But some states, the Enugu State and Lagos State, has, they have such provisions. Enugu State 2 weeks, Lagos State 3 weeks. But in common practice, you hardly see employers hardly give employees the 3 weeks for paternity leave. Common practice is 4 to 5 days for paternity leave. Then for maternity leave is 12 weeks, 6 weeks before the delivery date and 6 weeks after the delivery date. And when you come back from your maternity leave, you're given 1 hour to nurse your child every day. Now that's the leave. Another aspect of the leave is the leave bonus. So sometimes when we get our employment contracts, right, we do not pay so much attention to checking if we have leave bonuses. Leaves are supposed to come with bonuses, either to some companies to 12, some companies to 10% of your annual basic salary. So as soon as you're going for your leave, you're being paid that amount of money, or at the end of the year, depending on what your contract says. So I would like to emphasize on what the contract says, because
so if the contract does not say that, you're not entitled to it, so you cannot claim it.
You can't claim it. And even if you institute an action in the National Industrial Court, you won't have a case, okay, because in as much as the Labour Act provides such as our right, if it's not stated clearly in your employment letter, it won't hold.
Because you accepted, yes, willingly accepted
exactly,
those terms.
Signed off on that contract letter.
Okay.
So it's more binding. The contract is more binding than what the Labour Act says. So you make sure that those leave bonuses and everything, and all the benefits that accrues to leave are clearly stated on the employment letter. Then another right is background check. So you see a lot of time, before we gain an employment in a company, they ask, some of them do not ask for them to carry out a background check on us, maybe to make sure we have a clean criminal records and all of that. But the Labour Act states that we employers must seek our consent before embarking on such, carrying out such exercise. So, and also the HIV Act of 2014 states that on no grounds shall any employee be discriminated on account of their HIV status, okay, right? So on this ground, you make sure, the Labour Act also provides that no HIV test should be carried out during pre-employment medical test. Okay. So if the rights are violated, you have the right to institute an action in...
No HIV test should be carried out during pre-employment...
no, it shouldn't.
Shouldn't, okay.
It shouldn't be carried out because you have no need for that, because the labor law already stated that on no grounds should you discriminate anybody on that ground, whether positive or negative. So you shouldn't carry out that. Then, if these rights...
Sorry, in a situation whereby the employee is not aware of that particular right, and the HIV thing is carried out, and because of that, he or she is not employed in the establishment, what could happen?
Yeah, you could, if you know that it is your right to, to ask the employer not to carry out such a test, right? You have to institute an action on the National Industrial Court, right? And
this applies across board, private and in public sector.
Exactly. So whatever right or whatever terms of your employment that is being violated, right, you have the right to institute such an action in a National Industrial Court. Now, a National Industrial Court is the courts with the exclusive, jurisdiction over employment and labor-related cases and complaints. Now, when you file this court, when you intend to file any case, you make sure you have evidence and proof. And if you do not have, at least make sure, or you must have a witness who is willing to testify in the courts. So in so doing, there are so many benefits. In the US, filing cases are some of the lucrative ways of making money.
Yeah,
and in Nigeria.
Yeah, but we do not tend to take such advantage because sometimes we are scared, and so we feel that justice might not be served at the end of the day. Now, when you have the evidences or witnesses, that can testify, you can go ahead and file the file the case. Now, when it's filed, the NIC gives you the opportunity to resolve amicably with your employer.
Okay.
And then
Settle out of court.
Yes, and they have a center, the alternative disagreements, a resolution, a center where you can resolve this case with your employer, right? And you settle out of course. But in a situation whereby you both are not able to resolve amicably, then it takes it on.
Well, Nigerians would ask, what a way to start a relationship. If you do actually settle out of court with your employer, can you still proceed to work with that organization going forward? That really creates a very tense environment, if you ask me, and people tend to shy away from that, don't you think?
True, you're right. And in as much as we tend to shy away from that, it is right. It is what we should do. Now, this applies to all employment-related rights, not just pre-employment cases. It goes across boards. Okay.
All right. In case you just joined us, just in time for discussion, we're talking about labor issues and rights of employees. Amaka Ezeh is an HR consultant and shedding more light on the issues bordering on labor and labor issues. Amaka, looking at the issue, one very burning issue is the issue of salaries and wages and all of that. That is a major critical issue Nigerians can be. Even we see strikes here and there happening here and there with the federal government. Even the federal government, many analysts have said one is one of their failings. Where does the regulator stand in protecting laborers or workers in the industry when it comes to issues whereby there are laws that say before you start up a business there must be some certain amount of money set aside for wages or salaries, so that if your company runs into a financial challenge, yes, those monies can the workers don't pay the price for it. How come we've not seen an enforcement of such laws, especially in Nigeria? Because if you are we have contemporaries abroad who do not have these issues of, say, an employee is owing the employer, is owing them 6 months, 7 months, and all of that. How come that's really something that is prevalent in the climes which find ourselves?
Okay, I will say part regulation. I'm not sure about the regulation because, will there be a possibility for the regulatory agency to go through the financials of the employer before certifying them, or certifying them eligible to to recruiting talent?
There should be some kind of financial buffer, maybe like you have with banks who actually have securities in case they run into financial problems. They can't pay their their customers back their money. Don't you think those kind of things should be made available to the labor market as well?
Yes, I think you're right. It should be made available because it kind of it hurts the business when these issues arises. It's because the employees are disengaged totally. So I think there should be such regulation to make sure that employers have certain amount of money set out.
And the regulator doesn't even need the permission of the employer. He can't just take the money and pay the workers who can verify that they've worked for a certain period of time. That's my thoughts.
True. You're right, and this is a part of the issues what CIPM is currently advocating for. So for quite some time now they've been advocating for the review of the labor law because currently it doesn't reflect the current reality in the workplace. Now we have millennials, we have Generation Z, who expect more from the workplace than the baby boomers. So these are issues really that we are currently advocating. CIPM currently advocating for these issues to be resolved through the review of the labor law.
Now, you're an HR consultant. The question I ask in an organization, what role is the HR supposed to play between the employer and the employee? What role does the HR unit, what role does it play?
To make sure that employees are paid as at when due. Is that a question?
Yeah, I'm just asking, what more does it do? The HR concerning the employee, what are the roles that the HR plays to ensure that there's a smooth relationship between, the employer and the employee?
Okay,
And who should the HR be allegiance to, really?
Yeah. Who should the allegiance?
Is it more with the employer or with his or her fellow employees?
Okay, thank you for that question. So I think what is very big in the HR world right now is the employee experience. So companies are striving to redesign the employee experience, because the employee experience is all encompassing from when these employees come into your organization through the onboarding process till their time of exit. We are currently redesigning this experience to make sure that they get the best, to make sure that their rights are served, they get whatever they demand, right? So talking about allegiance, I think the HR consultant is allegiance to the law and to the policy of the companies. That is what your allegiance to. Now, you are not
to the social contract that is available.
Exactly.
Okay.
So that is why I will also have to refer us back to our contract. If you need a legal person to go through it before you accept, fantastic. If you need an HR person to review it, fantastic. Because at the end of the day, that is what the HR is going to be using. So the allegiance is basically on the policy, on the right thing, doing the right thing to the employers and the employees. So we are as a middleman, and what we serve is the policy that is at hand. So when going through, before you sign off on your handbook, ask questions so they can be explained. If you're not comfortable with any clause, ask questions, because that is not.
Okay, let me ask you my final question. I want to paint this scenario, which actually I read in the newspaper. A lady went for an interview, and then she had some growth in her body.
Okay.
And the minute she actually got there, I think she was the second person that got to the venue, wrote her name, sat down, and other people came in. Other people, as you know, many other people came in. Some minutes later, when the bosses started filing in, the security man approached her and had to escort her outside, saying that the bosses said they will get back to her. Instantly, really, she knew what the issue is, because the growth, what I read, quite noticeable. What should she have done in that kind of a scenario?
So in that kind of a scenario, that's discrimination, really. And the Labour Act strictly prohibits that. So like what you said earlier, would you start off, instituting an action against
a place you want to work
with? It might not really set a good tone.
That's not a good tone, yeah.
But that's what the Labour Act says. You instituted an action, you've been discriminated. I mean, they invited you for that interview.
Yeah, she was invited for the interview.
You have the right to be interviewed. Okay. And they should have even interviewed the candidate and make the decision maybe behind closed doors and that's it. But publicly doing that, it could, going by the law, you should instead of action.
Thank you.
All right, that's so much we can take. I really want to thank Amaka for coming on the show. It's great having you, Amaka. Thank you for really setting us right on the issues concerning labor and rights, of workers in the labor market. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, there's more on the morning show. Don't go away.